tēnā tātou katoa, tēnei ka mihi atu kia tātou kua hui mai nei I te pō nei, me wehi kia ihoa te timatanga o te whakaaro nui, kia tau iho ngā manaakitanga, kia koini ngā waihono I te pō, tatu nei kia tātou e hui tahi nei, me o tātou tini aitua, ko whakaraui ka mai nei, ki wainga I a tātou tēnei pō, tēnei ahi pō, tēnei ka mihi haere, ko rātou te unga wairua kia rātou ko tātou, ko tutu mai nei I runga I tēnei kaupapa nui whakaharahara. Ara, te tū mai o tō mātou hoa mākau I te pō nei, tēnei te reo rāhiri o te whānau o te here ngā waka e mihi atu nei kia tātou e hui tahi nei nō reira kātira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa kātou.
Kia ora Mike, nau mai haere mai, tēnā koutou katoa. So my name is Nick Smith and I have the huge privilege of being the Vice-Chancellor here at Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. And tonight is one of those nights where that privilege is very much alive and well because I have the opportunity to welcome friends, family, academic, professional colleagues and our wider community to attend the inaugural lecture of Marco Sonzogni, Professor of Translation Studies in the School of Languages and Cultures. Marco, as everybody who knows him, has an enormous passion. I've since learnt, as part of this lecture, that this passion stems all the way back from his upbringing, where he was surrounded by diverse languages and cultures. He hails from a small farming village in northern Italy, situated between the sea and the Alps, and he likens his life to a journey on a Waka, or translation, which has taken him across the globe, and eventually to New Zealand, a place he now considers home, and when he first arrived on these shores all the way back in 2004. He tells me that he accepted the job instantly before he told anybody, including his family. And his mother's response, that sounds like a place that's so far away, it must be the last place that has people on earth. But the people who he has found and the people who he has inspired and the people who have benefited from his enormous expertise are many, not just in this university, but in this society and in the globe as a whole. That is important, not only because of the value that he's added, but because of the way and the narrative that it fits in within this institution. Te Herenga Waka refers to our marae and means the mooring place of Waka, the mooring place of canoe. And like Marco, people from around the world have come here to moor their waka and join our community. For Marco himself, his academic journey started at the University of Pavia in Italy, where he earned a BA in Foreign Languages and Literature. He holds an MA in Anglo-Irish Literature and Drama and a PhD in Italian Studies from the University College Dublin. But it didn't stop there. He also has an MA in Literary and Translation Studies from this university and an MLit in Translation Studies from the University of Auckland. With those qualifications, that has buttressed a career which has resulted in his enormous impact in research. He's a highly respected academic who has acquired numerous awards and honours. In 2023, he was named an Officer of the Order of Merit by the Italian government for his contributions to Italian language, literature and culture. He also serves as panel chair in mass communication for the Global Undergraduate Awards, celebrating top essays across the planet. And he's received Italy's prestigious literary translation prize, the Montali Literary Prize. Professor Sonzogni holds numerous external engagement positions, including cultural advisor to both the Embassy of Italy and the Embassy of Ireland in New Zealand, and academic staff and teaching partnership with the University of Xinjiang. But as he says in his own words, the most rewarding part of his career to date, and it has many waters and many paddle strokes of his waka yet to go, is his interaction with his students, the responsibility and the joy of contributing to their lives and supporting their intellectual and emotional growth. He has done this in many environments, and many people here will have seen that in practice, but he also brings the kind of humility to acknowledge as we've just been talking about, that during COVID that was challenging. He tells me of opening up his computer, getting ready to deliver his lecture online to large numbers of students. And after speaking for a while and nobody responding, he said, "Can you hear me?" There was apparently a voice out the back which said, "Unfortunately, yes, I can." I'm told that person is in the audience today, so it must have been worthwhile in the long term, because he's come back to hear Marco for at least a second, but probably a third, fourth and fifth time. But Marco believes that being a teacher is about enabling others, and what he sees is the core mission of as an educator and as part of a university citizen. To manage all of this, and this is another unique and defining principle of Marco, is that it's an extraordinary amount of work that he does, and managing that workload is somewhat of a marvel to all of his colleagues, me included. But he readily admits that he's a self-confessed and unapologetic workaholic. Although outside work, you will find him doing other things, reading anything from medical literature to cookbooks or historical biographies, exploring cities on foot, which he believes is the best way to truly understand a place and its people, and enjoying classical music, having studied what seems like a trilogy of keyboards, the piano, the organ, and the harpsichord, for many years. His lecture tonight, Between the Lines, My Life in Translation, he will share some of the stepping stones in his personal and professional journey. He will do this by reflecting on the past, present, and future of translation, and why he agrees with the Argentine intellectual writer Jorge Luis Borges, who regarded translation as the more advanced stage of civilization. Marco, thank you on behalf of this university for bringing the ways in which you have advanced all of our civilization. We are very much looking forward to your lecture, and it's my great pleasure to now introduce Professor Marco Sonzogni to the lectern.
Kia ora, good evening, everybody. The two jokes I had have been used already, so... Anyways, it's a huge honor to be here with you all tonight. And yes, it is true. The student who said, "Can you hear me?" Unfortunately, yes, he's in the audience, and I can assure you that his grades were unaffected. Not only that, but apparently he has a Victoria Doctor of Scholarship for his PhD. So anyway, I come from a family of farmers and teachers, and that means essentially two things: that you are allowed to look up in the sky on condition that you keep your feet on the ground. And tonight I'm sharing some of that journey, a part of that journey. But I want to do that remembering two the very early moments at this university when my little Waka got accepted and moored at this beautiful place. I was welcomed on the marae by the late Piri Shasha, and when our nose touched, he whispered, "Benvenuto," speaking half of the language and half of the culture in him. And shortly after that, on another occasion on the marae, I saw Teripovai, Rawinia, and Kura, who was studying Italian at the time, and it was clear to me, that beautiful Maori saying, that we look back to look forward. And that's what I'm going to do tonight. So you have to bear with me. I'm going to take you on a little journey, what has contributed to making me the person and the academic and the teacher that I am. I will share a case study in translation, because after all, this is a lecture in translation studies. And then I will end with what I call auspices, with wishes. And I think you have a handout that I put in an envelope for you, as well as a bookmark. And I want to take this opportunity to thank my friend and colleague Sydney Shep for designing that beautiful bookmark. The illustration looks like a bit between the lines. It's to Waka, and it's a piece of artwork in our wonderful collection here at the university. So things went wrong very early. That's a premature encounter with a book. That's a Latin grammar. As my mother taught Latin. And I remember to this day, some page 10 or 11 of that book, the beautiful opening line of Eneid Arma virumque cano, which of course my mom could go on and quote, and there's a toy dog there. But that's I think a symbolic picture. I got exposed to language acoustically. I could hear my grandparents, maternal grandparents, speak in dialect. I could hear my father speak in dialect. And then I heard my mother reciting, getting ready for school in Latin and occasionally in Greek. And then on top of that, there was church Latin. So when you're small and you're little and you want to sleep and you have your mother on one side that goes on and on and on with the Latin and the scansion and the meter, and you hear it, you can't fall asleep. When that finally ends, then my father started his litanies and church Latin. But that installed a sense of beauty, and language is place, and language is sound, and that became my skin. So there's a number of Wakas here. You can see them. The one when I'm little, that's a river that I grew up by. And then when I moved to university, I had to choose between English and Russian. And I chose the language that I thought I knew a little bit better, and that was English, so I moved to Ireland. But that's a wonderful example of a Siberian Waka. And then in the middle, you see all those beautiful Wakas that you recognize being Air New Zealand's wonderful safety video. And I thought how beautiful. In 2014, I had an instance of what doctors call pulmonary embolism. Not one, not two, not three blood clots. Went on a journey inside my body, stationed in my heart for, luckily, very little time, and then moored themselves in my lungs. And I remember one of the nurses came and said, "Be patient, the doctors will come and explain to you what pulmonary embolism means." And I said, "Oh, Jesus." I said, "I can explain it to you if you like." And I went on and on for about 20 minutes, explaining that pulmonary is the lungs and what emboli, the history of the words. And then I realized that whoever was sitting in the bed beside me got the fright of his life. He said, "What was that?" Anyway, we're both still here. And we move on. And that's our marae, which I always looked at when I was inside. And I looked up, it looked like the keel of a boat, of a ship, upside down. And so Te Waka Rererangi, the flying canoe, which is the way Maori call a plane, for someone who had to cross the world by land, by water, and by air, seemed very appropriate. And then there's a beautiful image from my colleague Nalani, who hails from Hawaii. That's her own drawing of a waka. And then there's a Chinese scroll that I love very much for my recent journey in China, and some sort of very weird and scary response from artificial intelligence when I put in airship, Waka Te Rererangi, Aotearoa, New Zealand. That's what I was given. Before I continue my journey, I just want to acknowledge those who have made this journey possible. Representatives from the Embassy of Italy who are here, grazie mille. Representatives from the Embassy of Ireland, Garamila Mahaguev, and representatives from the Embassy of China, a very warm welcome. I'm going to do it. Fei Chan Gantier. Thank you very much. And of course, my thanks to some familiar faces that were here 20 years ago. Thank you for your support, for your patience, and for your inspiration. I would not be here today without this amazing support. I'm going to move up quickly because I know that life goes on and you don't want to be here all night. So a snapshot, that's the city where I was born. Professing is about believing. Yeah, you profess a faith, you check up the etymology. So I was born in the hospital in that city, and you will see why there's a goose there. My neighbor, my grandmother's favorite friend, closest friend, my neighbor was a midwife, a village midwife known as Lady Tina. She delivered my mother, and on the evening of June the 6th, she stormed into my house and said to my mother, "Do not go to work tomorrow. Your waters will break, your child will be born, and it will be a beautiful girl." So My parents paid a slight bit of notice. My mother did go to work. Waters did break in the middle of what in Italian is called scrutinio, well, moderation, marked moderation. She made it to hospital, and sadly, 50% of Lady Tina's prediction was incorrect. But she professed her faith with such courage, and 14 months later, she did it again. This time she said, and a beautiful boy will be born, and then my brother was born. I mentioned my parents because both my mother and my father and my brother, teachers in the humanities and in the sciences, remain to me unsurpassed models. Now, that's the landscape you'd find at this time of the year in Italy, the fields that shape me. I'm a farmer's grandson after all. And then the beautiful sunset in Moscow. What happens in the world today pains me because of the beautiful people I met in Russia, the beautiful language, the culture, and before I could study and read the poetry of Akhmatova or Pushkin or the novels of Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, it was Rachmaninoff's liturgy of St. John's Chrysostomus that hooked me into Russian. And that beautiful, reassuring, energetic sentence, as it was in the beginning, it is now, and never shall be. Sicut erat in principium, et nunc et semper. Then you have Dublin, and I put Inishmore here, one of the Aran Islands, where I isolated myself for 2 months learning Irish, grounding myself, my second level of indigeneity, first the dialect, and then Irish. I was also lucky to put my translation and interpreting skill at the service of the peace process in Northern Ireland, where I could see evil, and I could see grace, and I could see luck. And I said to my friends, when I saw evil in the face in Northern Ireland, and I saw it again in Kosovo, where I tried to practice my little knowledge of Slavic languages, that evil did not look like artificial intelligence. It was human evil. And then, of course, Waitangi, where I managed to go too late, unfortunately, but I did go there, grounding and in the indigeneity. Number 3, that beautiful sunset there. And then my passion for and my interest in translation grew out of, if it's difficult to translate or interpret human words, what about the Word of God? And so I went to the holy city of Vrindavan to study Sanskrit, and one of my future projects involves comparing different translations of the Bhagavad Gita. I was training with monks, learning to become accepted to the orders of Diksha and to the order of Sannyasa. And again, getting up early in the morning, the way that I did it in the monasteries in Russia, the way that I did it in the monasteries in Ireland, to hear language, place, and sound become one. And finally, Hangzhou. When I thought about a title for this lecture, I said, From Home to Hangzhou, Marco Polo style. I said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. But in a way, if not the first, the second book I read as a child was Marco Polo's travel diary, call it as you like, where he talks about the city as heavenly Hangzhou. So when I went there for the first time last year, after convincing my mother to join WeChat, which she did, because I said, sorry, Mother, there's another place for, sorry, this is what we discussed at times, there's another place for my ashes to be spread. Certainly the fields where we grow rice, certainly beautiful landscape in County Sligo in Ireland, where one of my closest friends and college friends is now buried, certainly Aotearoa, New Zealand, and certainly Westlake. And then it was my time around the Westlake with my non-existing Chinese, but with an anthology of Chinese poetry, that I discovered a poem written by a very distinguished Chinese poet, a poem that was written when this poet was 7, a poem about an animal. As you can see, the town I was born, we celebrate, we honor, we revere the goose. We grow it, we groom it, and apologies if there are any vegetarians in the room, we eat it. And so from goose to goose. And you're going to look at a side of my work in translation in a minute, but before I do that, I think I have a little surprise for you. I think it would be nice if we could hear this beautiful poem in the language it was written, and you're going to hear it from some very special people. Yuan Yuan. I'm going to read the first line, which is the most difficult.
曲项向天歌，
白毛浮绿水，
红掌拨清波。
谢谢. Yuan Yuan works at Waka, and she also taught at the Communication University of Zhejiang with me last year. Xie xie for all your linguistic and cultural education. And you've heard Hazel, which I Italianized into Nutella, and you've heard Luca, rigorously with a C and not with a K, and Eleanor. These are 3 students from the Communication University of Zhejiang that have come to finish their studies, that are mooring their wakas with us. It's a great pleasure to have you here. Now, I don't speak Chinese, but I decided to entrust some more elevated form of intelligence, be it artificial or human, to give me a little sense of what the poem is about. And there was no hesitation that I should give it a go. When I encountered the goose, I heard it before I saw it. Lo Bin Wang was asked to write a poem, age 7. Imagine someone comes around and says, look, that's a goose, write a poem. And so that had to be, it had to be, and of course, qua, 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 there it is. I'm not going to go into the translations, but I got carried away with this alliteration, as you can see. All I'll say is that pond paddlers is what you get in crosswords, and it applies to ducks, swans, and a goose, if you like. But I've highlighted a word in my Italian one, because that's actually, if somebody gave me that as a translation in a literary translation class, would I pass it or not? That's a bit too much for a child writing about a goose. But I have filled my translation with everything that I learned from the sounds of Irish, the sounds of Russian, the sounds of Sanskrit, the sounds of Chinese, and the sounds of Italian. And I debated a long time about the chiare, the Chinese as a word for green, it's green water, and my staunch country boy, I've never seen green water. I mean, there's grass inside on the bed of the torrent, but of course, it could be the vegetation mirroring. And so I decided to go for chiare, which is the foundational adjective in the history of Italian poetry. One of the things that makes me get up in the morning and give everything I have, for better or for worse, in my system is to work with students. When I started studying the history of translation studies, a number of places were mentioned, 2 in particular, 2 houses of wisdom. The house of translation in Baghdad, where a lot of knowledge got translated into Arabic, and from Arabic moved closer to Europe, and the house of translation in Toledo, in Spain, where everything got translated into Latin and then into the languages that were beginning to surface. And thinking about the house of translation in Toledo, thinking about Waka, I'm going to read a karakia, which is, I'm going to read it because I don't want to cause any disrespect by misquoting it. I want to read this Waka, this karakia, as a gift of thoughts and prayer to my colleagues in translation in Valencia and other parts of Spain who are suffering because of calamity. This karakia is part of a longer text, a longer karakia, in fact. Some of you know it, and I'm going to read it as a reminder that we have to work with the planet, and as a reminder that the answers that we look for the future are already written in our past. Fakataka te hau ki te uru, fakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina, kia uta, kia mā taratara, Kitai, e ike ake ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauriora. Seize the winds from the west, seize the winds from the south, let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean, let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened hair, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. This is my house of translation. These are students that have come to do their PhD in translation studies and have decided to give their gifts and their time and share it with me. Let's not talk about workload, about what this all means, but they come from every part of the planet. And the echoes of the sounds of translation, the first house of translation, my own house with my parents and my grandparents speaking languages, the house of Baghdad, the house of Toledo. I've been very lucky the last 20 years to build my own house of translation at this university. There's a lot of work to do. All these theses are anything you can think of: translation and mathematics, translation and the law, translation and the environment, translation and subtitling, translation and dubbing, translation and artificial intelligence, translation and chemistry, translation and gaming. I don't want to leave anybody out, because that's the nature of translation. Translation is everything. The other title I thought for this lecture was Translation is Everything, but there's a video with yours truly in it that goes around when we try to get students into the BC, where I start that video by saying communication is everything. And I got a lot of slack for that, so I said I can't possibly title the lecture Translation is Everything, but translation is everything. Translation is language, translation is place, translation is culture, translation is creativity, translation is scholarship, translation is luck. These are three different responses that artificial intelligence has given me by putting the word translation in it. And I could tell you beautiful stories around it, but I won't. The one story that I will tell you, it's actually something that we've just started at this university, which is evolutionary translation. It's a concept we are theorizing at the moment. I have come up with a sort of manifesto. We will launch the website later. Again, a huge, massive thank you to Sydney and all the colleagues around the university who have helped us develop this new concept and trialing it. I'm going to read, by way of theoretical thinking, a couple of things and crack a joke, if you allow me. I know this is recorded, but interpretation entails identification, entails contrition, entails visibility. Look at this one. What is loose and incomplete comes together. By gravity, the unfathomable is unfolded, the inconceivable is named. The translation becomes the original. Until you read the translation become the original, that could be a commentary to the result of the US election, but we're not going to go there. There's a lot of work, and that work is happening because my Waka has a place to be more than. Quick snapshot on project forthcoming, very quickly. Yes, it's a cockroach. Primo Levi translated a standards for the creation of a particular filter, and cockroaches were used and killed to test that filter. And that becomes a metaphor for the Holocaust. I'm looking at what prompted Primo Levi to translate that. There's no record of it in his papers, no record of it in the American standards. I'm also hoping to do some work with the Tourette Syndrome Association here in New Zealand, the way that I did in Europe, to make the life of those afflicted by Tourette safer by translating little bits about themselves, that when they can travel, when they can move, everyone around them knows what's happening. I will look into the different translations of the Gita to understand how elusive spiritual meaning can be within and beyond the word. Shemusini and Montale have been part of my life. They continue to do so. That's a still from The Beekeeper. I'm translating an Italian Renaissance text on bees. So at the moment, I'm spending a lot of time reading about bees, talking to people that know everything about bees. I'll give you an update. We're also trying to develop, for the first time in this country, a centralized portal about translation with information to make every community safe. So Ashley Bloomfield reminded us that Aotearoa New Zealand, in his view, and the view of scholars, is not ready for another pandemic. Well, I think Aotearoa New Zealand can and should be ready for crisis translation too. So we are in the process of creating that portal, and we're seeking some funding. So if you hear anyone who's willing to give some money, we're going to make that portal happen, and it's going to be made by students, and it's going to be made by scholars inside this university for the benefit of Aotearoa and of the benefit of our university, our city, and the region, and of course, the rest of the world can look at our example. And finally, Suzanne Aubert, you may think, what is Suzanne Aubert doing there? One of the most frustrating piece of translation I've had to do is to translate medical documents about a miracle so that the Vatican could agree that Suzanne Aubert can become a saint. Well, one thing I can tell you is that I already know that she is a saint. And my thoughts and prayers are with the Sister of Compassion in Island Bay that have trusted me with that work. Sister Sue Cosgrove, intended to be here. She can't be here because she's looking after a sick sister. This is another beautiful story, and all my Maori friends remember Sister Suzanne Aubert. So let's hope the translation can do the impossible, and we can have our first New Zealand saint. If that happens, remember, it happened in this place. Yeah? We're doing our best. So the way I travel is by Waka. This is a beautiful drawing by an extraordinarily talented Maori illustrator, Story, Amy Morehouse, and I thought someone called Story has a lot of story to say, a lot of story to tell, and I'm grateful that she allowed me to use this as my Waka, my Te Renga Waka Waka, and my Te Waka Rererangi Waka. I'm flying on land and I'm flying on earth. Very quickly, this is a poem. It's been part of my study, part of the book that I spent the last 10 years working on. It's an original poem. I think it's a translation. 99% of the scholars of Shemusini think it's an original poem. I think it's a translation. It's a story that my colleague in classics have helped me uncover. It's about the Roman army in Portugal about to cross a river and not wanting to because they're told that's the River Liti, and should they do that, they're going to lose their marbles. But of course, the general, being the leader that he steps into the water, crosses the river and says, "See, I remember you all by name." And he calls everyone by name. I wish that I could thank you all by name, and I thought that was a beautiful lecture if I did that, thanking you all by name. But I need to talk about translation. So I had to make the statement that prove that it is, in fact, translation. It wasn't going to happen. My colleagues in classics in this university, very generously, friends and colleagues in classes around the world, we cannot find that detail where the general calls the soldiers by name. So during lockdown, I went around and retrieved Shemusini steps in Portugal at the time. And you can see up there a statue in Ponte de Lima. So that's the River Lima. In the European philology, the two meanings. One is leim, L-E-I-M, which means to overflow. And another one, which is deleim, which means to forget. So the two meanings came together. The River Lita is the river that overflows, but it's also the river of oblivion. And of course, the locals, you can imagine, when anyone that thinks is stronger than you, that thinks speaks a better language, or thinks that knows better, tries to take over your place, how can you prevent them from doing so? So the locals spread the rumor, don't cross this river, or you lose your marbles. Anyway, no sign of that. I call you by name by the soldiers. So during lockdown, I retrieved step by step what he did when he was in Portugal. And on one night, I saw that lobby. I said, that would be a wonderful hotel to go to. But you can see there's a little something in the corner. And so I emailed the hotel and I said, can you send me a picture of the painting that is up there? Just in case there's something I need to know. And sure enough, that's a painting. And the text is in Portuguese, and that's where Heaney read the bit about the soldier, the general calling each soldier by name. How do I know that Shemusini was there? Well, he was there doing a number of things. Do I know that he read that story? Yes, because one person was there when he talked about the story, and that person was Michele Legot, poet from New Zealand, who happened to be there reading at the same time. So when I got hold of the program, all the pieces were coming together, I went all the way to Portugal, but the final key piece was Michele Legot, and I emailed her. And she replied and said, oh, yes, I was there. She said, her husband sent me a photo Oh yes, he did read the story there and he talked about it. Anyway, all this to say that you need a great deal of luck, pretty much in any walk of life. Anyway, let me wind down to a close. So this is Shemusini that reads another poem, which is a translation of another story about another place, about another Waka, a very beautiful Waka. And he talks about it as an unforgettable event, as a dream truth, as imaginative promise, and as reliable feel. That's what I want to be as an academic and as a teacher. I want every moment of coming together in this place of mooring Wakas, coming together as an unforgettable event. I'm actually, each day, each class is precious. I'm sorry to report that in 20 years at this university, I haven't missed, or touch wood, I haven't missed one day of work. That must be HR's either model employer or the worst nightmare. Well, I don't know. But anyway, the dream truth. Yeah, we dreamed of truth. The first time I thought that I would profess anything, I had a dream that I would be saving a school friend of mine in school from drowning. So I woke up and I went to school and I said, hey, I dreamt of you. You were drowning and I saved you. And he replied to me and said, can you swim? So reality check, but we dream truths and we make them become, we translate them into reality. Imaginative promise, one thing that I'm most grateful for my time at this university is the allowance to follow imaginative promises and give them the reliable feel that comes with true and lasting knowledge. So here, all my Wakas come together. You see a wonderful Waka on one side, you see a dragon boat of the other, and a story of collaboration, a story of a miraculous, unforgettable event, a story of literal and metaphorical translation. The story is of the monks being at prayer and seeing an airship, the Waka Rerangi, flying across above them until someone has to come down because the anchor of the boat gets stuck in the altar rails. And the abbot says, this man will drown unless we help him. And the poem finishes, and so they did, and the freed ship sailed. And the man climbed back out of the marvelous as he had known it. So when I look at what we stand for, when I look at what we want to do, what we look at what we try to do, I see connection, I see collaboration, I see community. I see many Wakas becoming one. Here's another reminder that alone we can achieve very little, but coming together, we can do a lot of things. Coming together, we make each other better humans, and we make each other better professionals. So I want to finish up with really two, or one. I was thinking about two, but this is being recorded, and the second story will probably get me into trouble. So I'll stick to one and finish up with this one. The first time that I heard the word professor, I was in the car with my father and my brother, and as we went to get gas at the petrol station, and we went and we got there, and the petrol station owner, Signor Panzarasa, very nice, authoritative person, the blue suit completely covered in oil and dirt from fixing cars, comes to the car and looks at me and my brother ready for all of this, and then looks at me and my father and says, Professor Mario, are you going on holiday? So I remember going home and said, Dad, whatever job that is, if it means holidays, I want to do it. But as soon as conscience and awareness became more into focus, I could learn what a privileged job that is. Both my parents taught for 45 years. Science on my father's side, humanities on my mother's side. I have a lot of appreciation for my colleagues who teach mathematics and physics and chemistry and biology and engineer. Every Sunday, I would learn names of Latin and names of animals in Latin. and name of Latin is in Italian. And on my mother's side, I've already told you Latin and Greek, and all the languages are now leaving me. So, I think I'm going to end here. I want to thank you for being here tonight, making the time to be here. Sorry for spoiling the post-election reading up on things. I recommend a beautiful Instagram post by Helen Clark, which I translated into Italian for some of my journalist friends in Italy. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your patience. I think there's a line that I will read if you allow me. I think I'm on time. Yes, I will read it. It's about the karakia, and it's a joke on me. So this is what, when I was doing my homework about this beautiful karakia in the Waka, which was actually recited when I first arrived. This is what it says. It's part of a longer karakia telling how the Waka Takitimu survived a storm when exploring the coast of Southwestland, because the Waka was well built and well managed. So thank you for helping me becoming much more well built, and with gratitude to all those who tolerate me every day, almost always well managed. Thank you very much.
E nā mana, e nā reo, e nā karangatanga maha, tēnā koutou katoa. Nā mihi nui kia koutou kua tai mai nei I tēnei pō, ki te whakarongo ki te koho ahorangi a ahorangi Marco Sonzogni. Ko Sarah Leggett, toku ingoa, ko a ho te amo o te wahanga aronui. Good evening, I'm Sarah Leggett. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Te Wahanga Aronui, and it's my privilege this evening to offer the vote of thanks on behalf of us all to Professor Marco Sonzogni for his inaugural lecture as Professor of Translation Studies at this university. This evening, Marco has taken us on a fascinating journey aboard the Waka of translation, sharing with us his experience, knowledge, and passion for languages and cultures in all their diversity. From a childhood and adolescence characterized by linguistic and educational diversity, through his years as a student and teacher around the world, to his significant contributions here at Te Herenga Waka for the last 20 years, Marco's inaugural lecture has demonstrated the depth and breadth of the scholarly work over the course of an impressive career to date. We frequently talk about the value of interdisciplinarity in academia, how the bringing together of different perspectives helps us shake the kaleidoscope of our knowledge creation to be able to see patterns in new and informative ways. We usually reference multidisciplinary groups, each scholar bringing a different perspective to help address a research question. However, in honouring Professor Marco Sonzogni tonight, we are talking about a single scholar who has himself brought different disciplinary perspectives to bear. From Italian, Russian, and Latin to the languages of music, maths, and chemistry. From linguistics and philosophy to medicine. From translation, theory, and practice to the analysis and creation of poetry, Marco's work is emblematic of what we mean by interdisciplinarity and work that is positioned at the scholarly creative nexus. Marco's lecture this evening has also reminded us just how multifaceted his work is. He is a scholar of literature, an expert literary translator, an accomplished editor, a scholar of intercultural communication, a poet, a leading international authority in the field of poetry translation, and I would highlight here his critical edition and translation of the poems of Seamus Heaney, a momentous volume that has received significant critical acclaim. Marco is also a researcher who is always at the forefront of new developments in the multiple fields in which he works. We have heard tonight a little about his innovative research in evolutionary translation, and he's also always interested in the challenges and opportunities for language learning offered by the rise of AI and how this presents opportunities for the development of new pedagogical models. I would like to end by talking just a little about the very special qualities that Marco brings to his role at the university. Apart from being an engaged and collaborative scholar, teacher, and practitioner, Marco brings a very particular and unique sense of energy and enthusiasm to everything that he does. He sees opportunities and seizes them. He has a gift for convincing others of the wisdom of new initiatives. He is adept at gaining funding and support. The relationships that Marco has built within and beyond the university, nationally and internationally, are vast, and I want to acknowledge the importance of these contributions to engagement, to building connections and community. And finally, as the Vice-Chancellor mentioned, Marco works very, very hard. So thank you, Marco, for our very personal inaugural lecture. We're enormously appreciative. And I want to also offer my personal thanks for everything you've done for our School of Languages and Cultures and for the broader faculty. We're going to shortly adjourn through to the Hunter Common Room for refreshments after we've had the closing karakia from Dr. Mike Ross. But first, please join me in again thanking Professor Marco Sonzogni for an excellent inaugural lecture. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe, Marco.
Nā katautoko ngā mihi ko mihi atu ki a koe, Marco. This closing karakia is just a sort of try to capture some of the things that you have spoken about tonight, but we'll see how it goes. So, Ke mihi aranga haua ko te mea ngaro I tō waka rererangi I ngara I tua ma te mā tauranga peange e tohu I ngā rangi punehu nei ma te ahi kupu e mahana I tō kiri kōkiri. Kia ora tātou.